Today on CodeDependent, I will be talking about animating colors. In a previous episode, I talked about using the animate effect for animating multiple properties. And one of the properties that we saw in that demo, we actually animated a color on the object and used arbitrary type interpolation to handle the proper interpolation of that color. But we actually have an effect that we're shipping with Flex 4 effects called AnimateColor that makes that a little bit more easy and obvious. So let's take a look at how that looks. So I have a demo called Animated Gradient. I was looking for a simple effect where if you have a sort of a 3D look on an object, when you click on it, let's say we're using this sort of spheroid type object to represent a button, when we click on it, can we give some indication to the user that there's actually been a click effect? So as I push on it, I want to animate the color in the middle to sort of detune it from that sort of bright specular highlight into a different color, sort of a darker muted green there. So how do we actually animate that over time? So in Flex 3, that would be somewhat tricky because you'd need a custom effect, basically. The way that we handle type interpolation in Flex 3 is we interpolate numbers. You give us two numbers, and we know how to do a parametric calculation between the two. It gives a fraction elapsed of an animation between two numbers, and it's really easy to calculate the number in between. But what if those numbers actually represent colors instead? What if you have the color green and the color dark green, and numeric interpolation doesn't work? Or even worse, what if you're animating from completely different colors, from red to blue? Then if you do a straight numeric calculation, you're just going to get not the effect you were actually looking for. So what we need to do instead with color interpolation is to actually break out the channels instead. Colors are represented as numbers, usually with 32 bits of information. There's a red channel, a green channel, a blue channel, and possibly a channel that's not used for anything, or in some cases it's an alpha channel. In this case, all we have are RGB values in that 32-bit integer. What we need to do is split out the values into their component parts and then interpolate each one differently. Say, well, the red value goes from this number to that number, the green value goes between these two numbers, and the blue value goes between these other two numbers. Animate them all separately, do interpolation on them separately, and then combine them in for a final result so that we actually get the effect we're looking for, and we're doing correct interpolation on the color as we go. So to use the AnimateColor effect, it's fairly straightforward. This application basically has two states that we're going between. It's the mouse down state and then the mouse up state, right? So we start from the mouse up state, we click on it, and we go to the mouse down state there. So we have state 1 and state 2. We have a transition declared, a single transition that's going to kick in whenever there's any state transition in the application. And during that transition, we're going to run this effect, the AnimateColor effect, and it's going to target the object of center, which is actually a gradient entry. It's not a component. It's not a graphic object. It's actually just an entry in a data structure of gradient stops for this object. And we're going to give it a quick duration. And actually, the duration is kind of important. When I first wrote this effect, I was using the default duration, and it felt so sluggish. And it turns out that there's actually timing differences that you want in applications depending on what you're looking for. If you're moving an object on the screen, I think a half second or a quarter second, even longer in some cases, is okay. That feels natural enough to the user. But for a click operation, you want it to be nearly immediate. And so duration of 150 milliseconds is really sort of the maximum before it started to feel too sluggish to the user. But that's an entirely different topic. So the important thing here is we're actually targeting an object that's not a component. In Flex 3 effects, everything had to be a component, right? You couldn't have an effect target a gradient entry because it didn't know what to do with that information. It was looking for a UI component or a subclass of UI component. In this case, the target is actually a gradient entry, and we're going to change the color information on that gradient entry. So if we go down here to where the object is declared, we have an ellipse. This is one of the new graphics tags that we have declared in Flex 4. It's got a fill, and the fill is, instead of a solid color, it's going to be a radial gradient. It's got a center value where we have that bright specular highlight in the middle, and then it has an edge value out there. So we're going to be animating this object here with the ID of center, and it's going to start from a color of that, which is this sort of bright green, and it's going to go to a color of that in state 2, which is a darker muted green. And what's going to happen is the state change is going to kick in. That's going to automatically run the transition. The transition is going to run the AnimateColor effect, and the AnimateColor effect is going to take this color, the starting color, and that color, the ending color, break out each into their component parts, automatically assign an RGB interpolator, which is a color interpolation object that we ship with the SDK, And that will take these separate RGB values, animate them over time, recombine them into the animated result, and then set that on the target object, and we get the effect that we are looking for. If you want to see the code for this application or related stuff, go to my blog at graphics-geek.blogspot.com.